So in this lesson, we're going to simulate an explosion effect so that the car flips up, and we also want the window to break off and one of the wheel to also break off. But before we do that, let's finish our challenge by adding limits to the bonnet and the boot so that it only rotates to a certain degree. I'm going to select the constraint, go to the constraint physics, turn on limits, turn on the Z angle, and let's start with an angle of 0. Now this opens up to there, which makes me think that's exactly what we want. Yeah, I think that's it. We can add the speed bump back so that this has something to collide on, and I'm also going to just make it, give it a rigid body type passive. Perfect. That works. We can also do the same. Just turn on the constraint, this, and exactly what we want. Perfect. We can get rid of the speed bump. We can animate this car to move a good distance. So maybe let me add keyframes and just move this up to here. So that will increase the speed, but I want it to be a bit slower, so I'll just pull it. And to keep a constant speed, you can select this object that is pulling the car. Make sure you select all the keyframes in the timeline. Hit V to change the handle type from free to vector. This will ensure that we have a more constant velocity. Though I might want to select the first input, the first keyframe, and use V and change that to automatic, so that it starts slower and just speeds up a bit. Now remember, we also have this constraint, which I'm actually just going to push up so that it's easier to see where it is. I think around there. So select that and just move the position of these two keyframes, which are the enable and disable constraints. Remember, when this constraint is enabled, the car is pulled, and when it's disabled, that constraint is broken and the car is freely moving forward with that momentum. So I'm just going to offset this to around 40 so that it's pulled for a few seconds and then let go, just like that. And so I want it to be blown up at around here. So add here, I'm going to add, let me just use a monkey head, just because it has an interesting shape that usually can create an interesting collision. So I'm going to give this a rigid body. Basically, we are creating a speed bump that enlarges and just pushes the car out of the way. That will simulate the car being blown up. I'm going to make this a rigid body type passive, turn on animated, and just add keyframes. So the car comes, and at this stage we get the missile strike. Let me add a keyframe here. So this starts out small at frame around 46, and at frame 48 I scale it up just like that, and immediately I scale it down nearly to 0 so that the car doesn't bounce on it. We want to make it like an invisible force or an explosion. So let's play. Perfect. Now you're going to have to play with your simulation quite a lot to make sure that you get the right animation you want. The car in our case flips back into position, which is not what we want. So let's go back to our force, this force here, and instead of pushing it that far, I think to make this flip, I'm going to have to push this to the side, and maybe I don't want it to be too strong. So let's try this. Let's go back here and let's push this so that it's being pushed around here. So Okay, just make sure around. Okay, let's try again. Yeah, and somehow the car still lands. One other thing you might want to look out for is the pivot point of your car. This is the center of mass of your car. Now, because our pivot point is very low on the ground, we have a very low center of mass. So that could be the reason why this always flips back to its legs. So we want to change that. I'm going to select a point in the middle, but maybe a bit forward, so that we can simulate the mass of the engine, so that the car is more heavier in front where the engine is. So maybe around here, but make sure it's in the center of the car. So cursor to origin to 3D cursor. So let's play. Yeah, I think that's better because we changed the center of mass. Now our car flips on its back like that. Now we can make this more interesting by adding a camera. So I'm going to add a camera here. Let me move my viewport to around this position, and I'm going to use Ctrl-Alt-0 to move my camera to view the scene from this position, and make this to follow the car. I think it explodes around there. So let's see. Let's go back to so I can start from a distance, watch this. As it gets blown up, this should try to follow. Yeah, let's try this. Let's see. Now we can change the focal length of the camera, something like 25, so that we see a wider scene. Perfect. Now, I think that's a nice animation. Let's render a quick preview of this. I can also turn on motion blur and go to my output, change this to FFmpeg. Encoding changes to MP4. I'll go to viewport render animation. If I view this, so this is the animation we have. Pop. Nice.